Hello, we are going to have a very special event today, and also the this event is where you usually get a person who is will be the host, and in this particular specific special program, I would say our host has become our guest. So I think that will be our starting point. And guest or host, who used to be our host, is the guest. Her name is Caroline Kears, and my name is Navneet Bhushan, and I'm going to be the conduit to discuss Caroline's journey and also her initiative on specifically on the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, specifically for women across the world now. But we started when we started, it was specifically for Africa, specifically for 5 countries, and we already have a specialized program that was delivered and also successfully completed. So I'm going to start and also maybe introduce and also explain this particular program. And I will request Caroline to start exactly what is this program and why or how it started. I think that may be a good starting point, right? Yeah, Caroline,
Yeah, that's
please.
thank you. Thank you, Navneet. Dr. Professor Navneet, a dear friend who I've known for what now, 10, 12 years maybe?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But our work together actually started through this program, and
that's
sometimes
right.
it's a frequency as well, no? So
Yeah.
thank you for, choosing to lead today's podcast, and also for, wanting to deep dive into the larger why, the larger reason behind what we are doing. I think that's very important, even generally speaking, for us to continue to harness intention and purpose behind the things that we do, because it is a very powerful way of becoming, and therefore our actions reflect that. um, on this podcast, I would like to talk more about something way before the program, and why this is important for me, like personally, on a personal level, as a woman. And I have to also add, as a woman of color, because there is nuance to that. So my personal background is a background built on a foundation of education and the benefits of education. But I have to also say that education, not in the traditional sense. I've been a rebel from the perspective of understanding the frameworks in education that don't exactly work 100%. And there are several reasons for that. And probably when we start to unpack the STEAM program, is where we can talk more about why, mainstream education isn't sufficient. And particularly for the current market that is opening up, and what that means as it relates to the current generation, and how they can be contributors. So, coming back to my own story, through phases of life, back in India, I started a community which is called Vibha. And Vibha in Sanskrit means cosmic light. And this, I don't know Sanskrit, but I had, this was a community that I wanted to start because I had just gotten kicked out of a job back in 2014. And there was a lot going on for me personally. And it was a point where I believe I was given the divine opportunity to recreate myself and recreate my life in a more intentional way. And while from the outside it looked really, tragic, from the inside there was a lot of transformation happening for me. And I realized that even being a woman, and the kind of things that we as women go through, even in countries like India, but even universally, taking care of a child, losing a job, what does it mean to be like that? What does it feel like? I felt very alone. But at the same time, when I zoomed out of myself, I realized that I was not alone. There are so many women who go through similar things. Maybe they don't have the support. They don't. have a space to express themselves or even find guidance or the right mentors. And that's how Vibha was born. Vibha was, a culmination of my experiences, but understanding, the greater collective of what we as women go through, and that we don't have to be alone. So some of the foundations of Vibha was to let other women know that they, when they're going through something hard and uh, challenging, like all of us do in life, they don't have to be alone. They can ask for help. They can come into this space, which was a safe space. And
So,
we currently have 250 women, and it's still active. I have kind of stepped away from taking the lead or sort of curating things, but that's sort
so
of one of the areas and phases in my life where I realized the need for this kind of an experience for other women. Navneet, I don't know if you want to
yeah,
say
yeah,
something.
yeah. Just one question I have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, is it 2014, right? 214, 2014, 14, when you started this, or that you sort of shifted? So,
Yes.
the question is, was that the year when you changed your name to Caroline Case,
Oh
or
my
was it
God.
before
That
that?
that is such a powerful question, and even like thinking about it right now, I can feel it in my chest because you're right. That was the phase where I was thinking of changing my name from Caroline Fernandez, because I wasn't really feeling I don't know, a genuineness around that name. And there was a deep inner search during that phase for me in my life. Who am I? Why am I here? You know, what are the sort of experiences that, allowed me to fall flat on my face and feel broken to a point where it was so empowering because I knew at the same time there was something in me that wanted to be expressed and be born.
So,
And
how do you feel? How do you feel the 10 years of Cares, right? I mean, Caroline Cares, it's already 10 years, right?
Oh, yes, yes, you're right. It is. It is.
So,
But wait, I have to tell you how I came to CARES.
yeah, okay,
So
okay.
CARES came about because I was reading this book by John Hope Bryant. He is well established in the space of working with underrepresented communities in America. He's an African American. And when I read his book, How the Poor Can Save Capitalism, I was really moved by the work that he does and what he stands for. Even as at a personal level, the kind of family man that he is, the kind of work that he does for communities, it really moved me. And I noticed in that book, he has given himself the middle name Hope. And I thought,
Okay.
and
What's the
at
name of the
that
book?
point,
Name of the book?
How the
What is the?
poor can save capitalism.
Oh, wow. Oh, very interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for telling.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Yeah. Yeah. Please continue. Yeah.
the book actually is very powerful. A lot of things that he was seeing way back when he wrote that book and another one which I cannot remember at present. Those
Okay.
things are coming true now. It's taken like maybe like a 10 to 12 year cycle to sort of up level to his predictions, but they're coming true. They talk about, the gaps between the haves and the have-nots. What does that
Mhm.
drive people who see other people with things that, might show that they're happy and they're sort of fulfilled? What does that drive people who don't have those things to do? And it's not a very pretty picture. So I thought that because I was starting this community for women, I also want, and I was also in parallel looking out for a change of, because a name I feel is very personal, don't you think?
Mhm.
And
Yeah, it
I,
is. It is actually, that is. I think it requires some sort of a courage to be able to take that call to sort of say that this is the name that I'm going to go to the world from this moment onwards. So I think that
Hmm,
moment itself, or whatever that moment, if you want to call, or the decision that at that particular point when someone takes that decision, that definitely requires not only, as you said, some sort of a internal driver, but also the courage to be able to go ahead despite whatever is happening. So that I think is a very specific moment for anyone to be able to say that this is what I have done because of what I want to do ahead, rather than what
Yeah.
has happened to me in the past. I think that sort of a
Mm.
shift is a phase change, I would say, and that sort of reflects in the name change. I mean, that's what I'm trying to sort of figure out. I mean, if I
Yeah.
may.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. That I think that's a very insightful share. And to your point about like the piece about courage, I mean, for me, it's like it works for
So,
me and
I
it
mean,
works against me.
it could have been Caroline Courage, right, instead of Caroline Cheers. I mean, if
Possibly, possibly. But when I think about the word care, and I've thought about this few years from then when I started to get into coaching, coaching clients, and even meditation also started around that same time in 2015. I realized that the energy of care is very. I mean, it's very fundamental. It feels very fundamental. It feels very timeless. It feels like something that cannot change, but it just gets richer and gets deeper. And courage might, when I think about the word courage, it feels like it's for me. And when I think about care, it's very, it sort of has an effect for everyone, when we're generating the culture of caring, even if someone coming in to interact with me will start to think about that, like we're thinking about it right now, isn't it?
yes, indeed, care is more related to the action, right? I mean, when you
Yes,
talk about the courage is internal and it is some sort of a maybe it can lead to action, but care by definition is action actually.
that's
So I
true.
think that's maybe where the action part comes into picture in this word. I mean, that may
Yeah.
be what you wanted
Yeah.
to do. I think.
Yes, 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 exactly. And I really feel that as I'm saying this right now, it's very interesting. I'm just thinking and reflecting. It's very transformational because to be reminded every day of that word allows us this freedom, to choose how we want to show up. And we all have, challenging moments where we're trying to decide, should we be at a lower frequency? Should we, be taking a higher road? And these are all choices that we're making every day on a daily basis. So I truly feel that the word caring is really, really, like you said, it's a verb, it's action, and it really draws out the best in us.
That's right. So I think moving to the reason, as you said. So from your sorry, you said about as you, I
Yes,
know that your education also or your skills that you had were also in medical field. So maybe
yes.
there was some subconscious field about caring from there.
Mm.
Maybe that could have been a possibility. I'm just trying to
No, no, you're
just
right. You're right. You're right. I have a background in healthcare. I'm a registered graduate nurse. I did my BSc nursing from St. John's
yeah.
Medical College. But I knew, when it's interesting that you said that because I think fundamentally, if we sit to think about who we are and our purpose in a lifetime, we know the answers because I was already choosing professions and fields that brought out the best in me. Like I felt good about being in nursing. What was that? Taking care of people, paying attention, things like that. And even though I moved away from healthcare, the spaces that I've chosen instinctively and intuitively and very genuinely have also been in the space of caring, but it's not been nursing. That's the difference.
Mhm. So how do you differentiate? Okay, I'm sorry to harping on this particular question. Care versus empathy. Is there some sort of
Mm,
a difference, or you feel it's sort of same? Empathy is a very important word, specifically from the STEAM perspective, which we are going
mm,
to discuss ahead. Because ultimately, the design part or the designing, you are designing when you are designing for someone, you are basically empathizing with the stakeholders or the so-called users
yeah,
potentially of the design. So the empathy word is in vogue in everywhere. So
Yeah,
I was a little bit wondering whether care has some sort of a connect with empathy also. I mean, just
yeah. That's such an important question, and I'm feeling very moved through this question, because for me, in my mind and in my heart, more importantly, I see that as a journey. I I really don't think that the act of caring for anyone can be exclusive from the feeling of empathy. I feel that I really need to reach into how it feels, the condition of another human being. And it doesn't have to also be a human being, it can be the planet, it can be creatures or anything that we choose to interact with. For me to feel it is allows me the to act in a way that is caring. So it's really a function. One is the function of the other.
So empathy is about understanding others, right? I mean, if I may add,
Yeah.
so obviously it doesn't really have anything related to action, which is what the care
Mhm.
is. So you can care for others. I mean, you can have empathy for others without actually caring, without actually
Mhm.
having the action. You can have understanding of others' feeling without actually caring. But for caring, you need to have empathy anyway. I mean, that is what my sort of connection. So that is
Mhm.
where I'm connecting to your name and also your work towards STEM. So science, technology, engineering, mathematics, specifically when the A parts, the arts parts comes into STEM, STEAM, and it has to have by definition empathy, which is the
Mhm.
understanding how it is. But I think it should be changed to care. That's what I am looking from your name and what you have explained or what I
Yeah.
understood. I think the STEM should be actually with C, not A. The STEAM should not be with A, which is actually
Mhm.
empathy. It should be with C. That's what I would
Right.
say. I mean, because action of imparting STEM to these people who through this art form as it's called or the artistic way with empathy so to say, and which
Mhm.
actually is, I think it should be with care. If you do that, it will be much more powerful. I mean, that's what I'm getting from this particular sense. So how did you move from 2014 Vibha to next? What was the next?
You're saying so much, and there's so much to unpack through what you're saying. I think I think having pure intention is really important from the perspective of um, seeing and feeling someone else and what they're going through. Because I think we're living in a time which is very it can be a contrast between being a part of a mad rush and a race right now to really slowing down within ourselves uh, and questioning why we do certain things. And it can be a very scary exercise for going through that, because then a lot of things that we do start to, they don't feel genuine. They feel like they've been thrust on us, and we've just adopted them blindly. Those things, whether it is go through this education, go get that job, go do this, go do that. It feels very external, and it's not coming from within us. And I think that just the act, the practice of asking this with pure intention. Why am I here? What kind of gifts do I have that maybe sometimes we need to develop within ourselves? And I know that it's taken me a while to develop, and also I think have the courage to bring these gifts forward. I feel that even though back in 2010 I had seen many of the things that we are doing, I had seen them in my mind's eye in 2010, but I also felt that I was not ready to actualize these things. And I don't think it would have come out the same way. 2014, and then gradually into the chrysalis, right, which is where we're kind of moving right this conversation as well. And it 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 was actually separate parts that came together, and it happened during the pandemic. All my Commercial work had come to a pause because of the pandemic, and I felt that that was the right time. Excuse me. I felt that that was the right time uh, to integrate all these pieces of creating community, education, and they were all separate before that. And that's because I was thinking of it separately. I could not see the integration. And when I was able to, have the courage with and authenticity within myself to say, I want to now integrate these pieces, that's when the chrysalis was born. And I feel, there's so much of layer to what we are talking about right now because the chrysalis is also a journey, The chrysalis is that space where the caterpillar goes in, and then it's a very painful process for the caterpillar because it's breaking down. It's literally breaking down what it is, what it knows, and it has to become something else. And there's a part of it that's trying to withhold, trying to say no. And if I were to uh, look at the parallels of how this connects to people or for us as an individual level, as well as to communities, because that's really where my work has always been with communities. I see it's the same thing because the caterpillar has to go through all of these changes, which is very painful. And how might we, as the chrysalis, as the safe space, how might we facilitate this journey in a way that people and communities have access? They have to do the work because it's all on us. We have to do our own work. But having the safe space, having the guidance, having the tools, that can, if without it they would go from level A to, this would be like the delta, with like a chrysalis experience, bringing in experts, hand holding them and doing all these things, it can be beyond what they might imagine. And that is very powerful because even in the caterpillar has what is called imaginal cells of the butterfly. So it's there, but it has to be activated and it has to be supported and guided in the right way. And as I'm saying this, I'm really moved because I feel that it's a very spiritual experience. The kind of work that we're doing is really sacred. We are using our gifts, but we are also providing, a space for the enabler in all of these little caterpillars to birth into the butterfly. I know that was long winding, but that.
No, so I think I like the many interesting words that are stitched in your your description, including words like intention, also genuineness, courage was also there, and also one very interesting point about okay metamorphosis. I think the transformation, and but I think very interestingly the empathy part with the caterpillar itself. I mean, that itself is the you're caring for the caterpillar and sort of imbibing the experience that he has. So I have a little bit of a scientific question about it.
Oh my God,
Richard Feynman
I know.
actually talked about these poets describe the rose, right? I mean, in so many different words, but actually it has a scientific, from a scientist perspective, it will be very specific, very non emotional, non emotive, very
Yes.
logical, very structured, very systematic, which may be more from the point of view very dry, if you may, from the science point of
Mm,
view. I mean, from the non-science point of view, or the descriptive explanation to the feeling emotions part, where the humanities, art, and also the our human nature per se
yeah.
really drives us towards. So this side is really your so-called logical way of looking at it, with logical structured way of looking at things, which of course will give us very nice sort of a way to be detached really from what you're feeling, and also
Mm,
describing things in a very structured manner, where it could be reductionistic, or could, even if the complexity is there, you still try to have your lenses which are non emotive, I would say.
mm.
So how do you, I mean, so you seems to be really very other side, I mean the right side of the science, if you may, which
Right
is
brain.
yeah, right brained. I mean, I am not very sure about whether it's the right word to use, given the science really doesn't really believe in right or left now. But
Mm,
I mean, having said that, there seems to be that sort of it. So how does you really sort of came to these areas which are so-called science, technology, engineering, mathematics, which per se, by definition and by design, are really very objective, if you may,
mm,
and also very structured fields, and also the mind of the emotion has to be minimum, if you may, from
mm,
point of view of understanding. But the way you described the caterpillar becoming a butterfly, I don't know whether any biologist will describe that way, or
mm,
any scientist will. I mean, it will be more of a art form or a artist or a descriptive. So I think I'm just trying to figure out where is the science part and how this STEM part really came to chrysalis, if
mm.
you may.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So, for me personally, while I might use language that is very non-sciencey, I'm very structured as a person. And I have had the benefit and the privilege to work with companies that are very structured, like way back in 2002, working with Dell, as Dell Computers as a company. They're very metric driven. And even if you have a feeling or a feeling tone or work, you have to deliver results. And that was my personal limited experience around structure and function and measurability. And the other thing is that in my experience, we do have a tendency to believe that these two facets of who we are need to be compartmentalized. They don't. And this is also where women play a very important role when it comes to looking at something that can be labeled very dry, but bringing certain dimensions that are necessary for results. Because after all, we aren't machines. We might pretend to be one way or the other. We do feel, and we can structure as well. And there can be a balance when being intentional and conscious about how we choose to show up. For example, just program and project managing this entire program has invited the structured part of me to come out. And being able to work with different stakeholders, measure what's happening, have these dashboards and reports, all of that has not been a miss where I have seen myself. But at the same time, I have to say that we must challenge this belief and this paradigm that one, they need to be separate. That is the feeling tone and having structure. And the second is, I would argue that it is very important to have not really emotion can be seen as dysregulation. I would say being regulated and having emotional intelligence, because that is where we build rich relationships. That is where we build the currency of trust, and we are working with one another. We're working with people who we've never met. Everything is virtual. How does anyone um, uh, invite people who you've never met to participate in such an active way, to dedicate their time, their effort, their the how do you say, their own missions towards something so complex? Because the program that we're doing right now has 5 countries, it has experts, it has regional partners. And if I approach it from a structured perspective, the question that I beg to ask, and this is for myself but also to everyone who will be watching in, is how do you build the trust and the knowing that this is a good program, this is worthy of my time and my effort? Because time is very important for all of us, not only on a day to day basis, but in life. Like, zoom out, what does it mean to be dedicating time to something? And so that is where I believe that the dimensions of kindness, of caring, of empathy, of deep listening, of respecting, one another, those are things that, and going back to what we began with, they're not really taught, and they ought to be taught, because business is not just a transaction. It is about relationships. It is about paying attention to what's important for you and how I can serve you. And that's really how we build. So I'm a very structured person, and it does serve me well, but it's also limited me, because I've realized that there is a ceiling to how much we can do from a perspective of just bringing in, numbers and figures, and not really paying attention to the whole person that we are talking to, who's in front of us. And I also believe that we need to first consider ourselves as whole beings, with feelings, with emotions, knowing how to regulate, knowing how to listen better and show up better. And that's really where, the whole landscape of what, learning, relationships, business can really bloom and blossom into.
Okay, so I think one question that is coming, and also I like to quote uh, Nicholas Taleb, who,
Mm,
I think the book is this, I think either Skin in the Game or one of the books that he has written. Maybe it's in the Anti-Fragile, or I think it's Skin in the Game. Anyway, the quote is, it's called Soviet Harvard illusion. That is what he
mm.
calls. Is basically, he says that teaching birds to fly,
Right.
giving them lectures on flight,
Okay.
and believing that the lectures are helping them to fly is the
Mm,
illusion that the Soviet and Harvard people have. So the question that I have is, as you have mentioned, the teaching part, and also, I mean, learning, and also integrating these all these things into whatever your journey is. How much of this is really imparted by the education system, and how much you really learned on your own, or learning on your own through the processes that you have been subjected to, maybe, or
mm.
gone through. So that's a
Yeah,
question.
I think this is a very powerful question, because when you ask this question, what comes through for me is that, for example, if you take two people and place them in the same environment, and I'm also thinking of a petri dish, but what I mean is, experimentally, if we were to observe these two people placed in the same environment, with the objectives of having them play out, with the freedoms that they have, play out certain scenarios. And even cursively, if we were to approach that experiment, we would probably realize that these two people being placed in the same environment would do something very different. And there's a lot of complexity, isn't it? It's like the iceberg. You look at the iceberg, the analogy of the iceberg. Most of the time, when we see things and we see people, we're seeing only the tip of the iceberg, isn't it? There's so much underneath, which is an amalgamation of lifetimes, this life, everything that has influenced them, and how that has played out from their belief system, and what that means when it comes to their decision making. And I say all that because we're all like this, isn't it? We're all placed in certain environments, and to your point around the teaching and the learning, it feels like an illusion most of the time, because we don't really, there isn't much that is new, and at the same time, spending time to go inside ourselves and really be discerning about, again, about the intention and why we do certain things, opens up this space for us to decide, to either stay with something, and develop the discipline and the consistency to develop those things, because they're already there within us somewhere. Subconscious, you used the word subconsciously earlier. Subconsciously, we already know, but sometimes we have to interact with the external environment. We have to read something, we have to have a conversation like this, maybe listen to a song that triggers something that's only unique to me and only unique to you. Only you can see it, only I can see it. So therefore, I would kind of say that it's a very personal journey, yes, I could be in the room with several other people, and my journey could be completely different compared to those people. And it is a choice. And that is, I feel when I say that, it's such a beautiful thing to have choice, because if I'm learning, for example, if we're talking about STEM and the various subjects within it and what that means, it's a choice for me. And why did I choose to get into this? Not for myself, because of the current situation. If you look at some of the statistics, and I have them, but I really feel I don't really want to share that. I want this to be conversational. Is that for women, we still have a very low percent of women moving into the field of STEM from a higher educational perspective. And when I read through a lot of these reports and statistics, the question I ask is why? If it's there, if those opportunities are there, why are women not moving into, computer science and mathematics and engineering? We just have about 29% of women, even though the number has gone up. Relatively speaking, the percent still remains the same. And then when you look at the workforce, it's the same thing. And these are very systemic things, but they're also very personal. For example, if I were to relate my own story, at a time when I had the opportunity to go into math, and I was quite good at math in college, I gave it up because when I look back, I wonder why I did that. It was the easy thing to do, to just give up.
So
And
why did you give up? I mean, if I can
that's what I
ask.
just said. It was the easy thing to do, to give up.
Oh,
And
mm,
also because in my mind, I never thought about going into engineering. I thought I'd go into medicine. But looking back, if I had some sort of awareness and maybe, some sort of guidance, I might have actually gone down that area, you know. And I'm saying that, and I want to weave in the aspect of this program, because I recognize universally that we need more women as a representation of more diversity in education, because it helps you in problem solving, critical thinking, analysis, at a very fundamental level, these subjects. But, from that, the ones that are a lot more visible would be innovation, creativity. You spoke about courage. I think that there is a lot of these facets that don't get talked about. And let me also bring in the point about what you said about the emotional and the structured. I think these are things that we also need to underscore and emphasize, that by moving into these fields, women can better develop their leadership skills. They are able to use their voice in a way that can be inspirational, um, in the workplace right now, with the kind of percent that ranges from 21 to 37% represented across the board in this landscape, we still have a lot of work to do. And apparently, with the numbers right now, even by 2070, 202070, we are not going to have equality, not equity, but equality, when it comes to having more women. And some of the benefits, like from a perspective of businesses, because a lot of businesses don't think of having women. We also know that at the mid level, most women tend to drop out because we get married, we are having babies, and it's very difficult to balance life, balance the home, and show up at work. So these are places where organizations, businesses, business owners can start to think better about it, because even from a profit and performance perspective, there is merit. There is merit from the perspective of having more women in leadership, sharing their perspectives, which men may not quite see. And that's not a bad thing. It's about bringing these together in a harmonious way. These are the deeper reasons of why I felt, when we were talking about STEM 18 months ago, why this, why now? We understand the direction that the market is taking, and how having these kind of jobs, when it comes to technology, innovation, creativity, how does it actually play an active participatory role in shaping our future. So we have to create these spaces where we support women to believe in themselves. We support them in saying these are the benefits of you joining this for yourself, for your community, and coming to our program. While we have ended this cohort, there's a lot we have taken away. At the same time, we're not done yet. We know that we have to refine this process. Even for 2025, we're looking at active partners that believe in this approach to education, not something that's linear, but being able to provide space for women to, one, believe in themselves, believe in the ideas of solving real problems on the ground that can impact their community, or come up with something completely radical, be able to create something completely radical but beneficial. And a lot of times I'm reminded of Steve Jobs, because I know that there are several others, primarily because sometimes people don't know what they want. They're just swimming in the same cycle. But in order to do something different, we have to completely move away from the status quo. Um, yeah.
So I think one question, one point specifically about the education system that you mentioned, which has to be changed or metamorphosed, if you may, or
Mm,
transformed. So if you look at the past 30 years or so, in 1994, World Wide Web was born. I mean, WWW, and in fact, that gave these new type of companies, Google, Amazon, these type of companies which are very different than the previous companies, and these become
mm,
billion-dollar companies, and which was based on algorithms, which is a new type of a structure algorithm, which is a giving instructions to the machine, so to say, through whatever structured way of controlling machines and also connecting them together. So
right.
these are the companies which are very different from the previous companies. Now we are
Mm,
30 years ahead. We are 30 years ahead in 2024, and also our education system still continues to be older. I mean, relevant for the previous one. In fact, in 1994, when specifically in 1994, why? Because the word STEM or the term STEM was born in US, because they said that we need more people to join science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and that is how they sort of combined this into STEM in 1994. But there was a realization that we need to change the education system, which was also subservient to the previous scenario, previous years of much more materialistic effort or meta based companies that were there. So the question really is that as we are trying to figure out that we need to replace the education system, will it not be a better? I mean, as we discussed, the question that I had was learning versus teaching, right? I mean, that is what was trying to ask. So, learning is, as you said, very, very experiential, individual, and also you learn from everything. I mean, it is nothing to do with science or this way or that way. You learn from everything, but how do you imbibe, understand, and of course evolve is really what we should be looking at. So I have a sort of a proposal that if we, instead of calling it STEM, we
mm,
should call it thinking, understanding, learning, and empathy. And empathy is
mm.
the care, I think. So, will that be a more interesting sort of a program? Should be not about STEM. Of course, STEM is there, but we are actually helping you to think, to learn, and understand, of course, and hold empathy. So that may be a sort of a program for the 2025 onwards. I mean, that can be a proposal, and that can be a potential shift, as I think you're trying to explain. Then we don't need to talk about the right brain or left brain, because it is about
Yeah.
thinking, understanding, learning, and of course empathy.
Yeah. Yeah, I love what you have introduced. And to everyone who is and will be watching, and these are not prepared questions, so I'm actually
Mm.
learning and discovering this for
No, no,
myself.
so I'm discovering right now what we are saying. So I'm
Yeah,
not really, nothing is there as a sort of a
right.
input. It is just coming up. Okay.
Exactly, and I appreciate that. When you say this, it's very interesting, because it comes back to the acknowledgement of how we are whole human beings, right? The part about thinking and understanding, these are very deep, deep facets that we have, and that we have the privilege to access, to think, to understand. to empathize. And as a result of that, there is an absorption at a very core level that's happening for us. And I have to add to that because I feel at a very, very fundamental level as human beings, we have the opportunity to continue to be and practice authenticity, because thinking as a practice is not, I would say, there isn't much thinking going on these days. There are thoughts, a lot of thoughts, yeah, in the ether. We take on people's thoughts, we believe that those are our thoughts, but real thinking, original thinking, is something vastly different from the way we understand. And that in itself, those facets need to be unpacked in a way that people can connect it back to who they are. And this itself is a journey, because I think, we're at a time where there's just too much of thought and too much of action and very little integration and very little, space that we have to give. It's a permission that we give ourselves to really reflect and really be honest and completely, peel back that veil, open up and see what is underneath everything that we have been conditioned to um, think that we are. And so, like, even when you say this right now, I do believe that that is a lot more integrative and comprehensive, because yes, you're right. As it relates to STEM, it's limiting because it's not as welcoming of the whole human that is, emerging through these kind of facilitative spaces, these spaces, because we are also changing through this, isn't it? Through our program that we just finished, we have changed. We're not the same people. We have learned things. And for me personally, it's a very humbling process. It's humbling because I realize that having the beginner's mindset and knowing that we don't know as much as we think we do, and having that sort of wonderment, coming in with a state of like awe of how these things go beyond what we predicted. It was very, very different, but that does not mean that we go away from it. We come back stronger. We have learned. This is the learning too, as we are saying this. So I think that that is very profound. Yeah.
So I think one point that is has emerged in this discussion, and also trying to understand what you are trying to do, is also this point about really about others and us, right? I mean, so there
Mm,
is this I am doing, or they are doing, or what, right? So how much of you think that you were doing what you have done in your life?
mm. That's a very deep question.
Oh, I
I'm
think we can
reminded
have
of
deep answer also we can have.
I'm reminded of this book by Deepak Chopra, which is called Synchro Destiny. And while he brings in a lot of science and quantum into the book, I think he's done a fabulous job of expressing the spiritual dimensions, the dimensions which earlier were very woo, but now are mainstream in understanding that and this was a point that I wanted to share, but I forgot. At a very fundamental level, it's all energy, isn't it? Everything is energy. And we can't run away from this fact, whether we approach it from science, whether we approach it from spirituality, or this whole quantum science, way of looking at things. It's all energy. And to your point, so the why I said that was, you asked whether it was me doing it, or what is that, the whole expression. And my god, like, this can be, we can really go into this, but why I brought up Deepak Chopra is because in his book he talks about how we have there is a tendency, unless we have really reflected, there's a tendency to go towards pleasure and run away from pain. And it's this pain pleasure sort of a thing that most of the time we're in between. And therefore, opting out of this, I would say, a mindset of consumption to creation, co-creation with the universe, um, gives us the ability, but also the freedom to realize that we are also at a very fundamental level, just this energy that I just mentioned and we're talking about. And what does that mean when it comes to, you spoke about the doing, and I'm also talking about the creativity, is allowing higher frequencies, this life force or cosmos, to work through us. And we think, like you said, most of the time we think we are doing it, but actually we are just channels to allow this. And I think for me personally, having meditation, having prayer, reading scriptures, being in the presence of the practice of fellowship with people who are also thinking like this, um, allows me to remember all these things, because it's there. It's there. We just have to tap into it like a radio frequency. And there isn't any specific answer, but also to have the humility, the humbleness, to know that we are just a small speck in this vast cosmos, and but we have to allow it. We have a unique, there is no one like you and there is no one like me, and that doesn't make us special. We're not special. We are unique. We are unique, and we are born unique with, even right to our finger print. And that means we have a responsibility towards what you just mentioned, that expression, that soul expression, using our gifts. We have a responsibility to activate it, develop it, practice it, allow it to interact with the world in the most splendid ways. And this might seem flowery, but it's not, because when we sit to think about it, everything, even if we want to be mechanical and structured, we still have to be honest about this. So, yeah.
Okay, so I think very nicely put, and also the point about ultimately we are talking about some sort of a education system or the
Mm,
formal education system
mm,
which is existing. And of course, as you know, that existing education system came into existence in the form it is from the industrial revolution, or the factories that
yeah,
wanted to have workers, and then 9 to 5 job was really what came from the factory or the production or industrial structure achieved. Before that, it was craftsmanship, and as I think you mentioned about fellowship, so it was also always about interning with a craftsman who is an expert and who end to end he produces something. So will that be a return to craftsmanship in the new world that we should be looking at, in terms of how the education system should be more natural also? Because as I said, that Soviet Harvard illusion is basically we are actually not. The natural system is that we are natural learners, and in fact we are natural learners as per the Finland schools also, as what they teach or what the way they conduct their primary school. So in that context, will that be a possible future to say that the natural way in which people learn should be, or the natural way they sort of explore themselves should be what should be the way education system should be structured or designed? And so all these differences of science, technology, engineering, mathematics, humanities, and everything else should be part of whatever the natural learning progression of an individual takes him to. Will that be uh, a a good way to supplant the existing system or completely replace the education system? So that's a,
yeah.
I think, dilemma that we have. So
Yes,
what
it is
can
a
be your
dilemma. And, we're talking about something very complex. It's not complicated, it's complex. There are many layers when it comes to, the systems that have been put in place, including the Prussian model. What we're talking about right now, from a formalized structure of education, is the Prussian model, and it dates back to, a very long time ago. And we're still perpetuating a system that actually doesn't work. It's non-relevant. And if you ask for my honest opinion, it's not a very good opinion about our education system, because I've questioned it as a young person. I've questioned it when my son went through school, primarily because it just is not making any sense. And at the same time, we have to understand that you know there are greater forces at play to keep these systems in place for the benefit of the small group that benefits from this whole institution. So I don't think that I would want to go in and try to disrupt something that has been carefully placed there for whatever agendas. Rather, to see, like you said, supplant, to add as dimensions in a way, because change is chronic, especially where these things are concerned. We cannot expect overnight for parents to come in and say, I'm going to take my child out of school because I don't see any benefit. No, because they have been indoctrinated into these systems and have not questioned it. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of how you say, hypnosis that has been integrated into us believing that the material aspect of what we do will get us to the non-material aspect, which is the joy, the peace, the growth, the vitality. But it's far from the truth, and most people don't know how to get there. So I would envision that we are not there to disrupt that, because we know that change is chronic. We know that people will probably run in the opposite direction if we try to be too radical. We're not radical. We don't want to practice radicalism. We want to say, you know in essence, we respect what you are doing and the choices you're making as a student, as a parent, as a business, and how we can add this. Why is it beneficial to add this? How can it benefit you? Because it's like the consumer mentality. People will only take something that they see will benefit them. So being able to explain this to them, um, without disrupting the paradigm, the current paradigm, by and by, we are creating a legacy that will live on beyond us. And because it's not about us, it's about the change that we want to see. Mm.
So I think we are in the interest of time. We have
Yeah.
about a couple of minutes. You used the word uh, co-creating, I think, in somewhere in this. So the question is, will in 2025 onwards, Caroline Cares will become Caroline Creates?
Mm. I don't think I've ever gone away from creation. I think we are the creation, isn't it? It's like looking at art, but also realizing that we are the expression. Um, I have actually, been ruminating on this and just the energy of it, not the creation part or creates, but really the energy of my name. And to be honest, in 2015, when I had introduced this name, it's not a formal name, but it's an energy that I wanted to bring in. Someone had related this thing, and you probably will know this better than I. I think it is Shiva, Lord Shiva, that had this churn in the ocean. The uh, and this story, I don't know the details at the moment, but this churn in the ocean that he created was an analogy that was shared with me because I was going through an inner churn. And so, to your question, maybe, I don't know, I haven't thought about it, but maybe it's the right time to think about it. Yes. So, I want to thank you for that.
Okay. So I think we have a couple of minutes, and I must thank our guest and who actually is our host for doing this session and also giving me this sort of a opportunity to be able to part of this session. It has been a wonderful sort of journey in 1 hour to understand how Caroline became cares. Caroline cares, and hopefully, as part of the care, she also will be continuously creating as she has been creating. So, I think this has been a wonderful sort of exposure to what you are and what you have done and what you will be doing ahead. So, I must thank you. Any final words you have will be very, very I think useful for all of us. So please share what you want to share now. Just 2 minutes.
Yeah, my God. Okay, 2 minutes. So, in 2 minutes, first off, I want to thank you, Navneet, for hosting our podcast today and deciding to bring out. I'm very shy to say this actually, like my story, because it just feels very over the top, but really to bring out the essence of what we are doing here in this program, the STEAM program, and bringing out, like you said, the feeling tone, the intention behind it, because it's very easy to get lost in the activity that happens doing this, transacting there, and all of that stuff. But coming back to really these very strong, nurturing aspects which are important, revisiting it at the towards the end of this year, and allowing this to also feel like a launch pad for 2025 to open up, to be discerning, to be intentional, but to also allow the vision to sort of come forward. So thank you very much for your time and for your sincerity and for being a fabulous host on the Chrysalis podcast. Um, and I want to also thank those who are watching in as well as those who will be watching in. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being on this journey. We really want to continue to support through the programs that we are doing. And we look forward to seeing you on our next episode very soon. Thank you. And bye
Thank
bye.
you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.